Hello, Back to Basics CoDA members. This is Michelle. I am here to help you with the process of running the Back to Basics meeting. In this presentation, I'm going to be going through the 3 different leads that are needed for each of the meeting. That's not to say that we have to have a lead for all those 3 positions, but it is best practice to have 3 different people running the 3 different sections of that meeting. One person can technically run all of it, but it seems to run smoother when there's 3 different people, as well as allows people to participate and enjoy the meeting and not just have to worry about only managing the meeting. On my screen right now, you can see the Google Drive for Back to Basics CoDA, and there will be a link in the comment section or the description of this video. The first item I'd like you to look at is the Back to Basics meeting guide. The Back to Basics meeting guide has all of the items that you will need to run the meeting, whether you are the tech lead, the moderator, or the meeting lead. And those are the 3 different roles that people fill when they are working through the meeting. The guide gives a quick rundown of everything that happens. We'll first start with the tech lead. The tech lead, the 3 main things that the tech lead does is they will start the meeting. And what that means is if they have access to the Zoom meeting account, when the 7 o'clock, between 7 and 7:15, the tech lead would then start the Zoom meeting. If they do not have access to the group Zoom account, then they are going to log on between 7 and 7:15 to help and assist anyone who might need any help unmuting themselves or have any questions about the meeting. So it's really good to familiarize yourself with everything in the guide. The links that you will find there are the Google Drive links, the links to the readings, which include the preamble, the welcome, 12 traditions, etc., and the meeting guide outline, which is on my screen right now. The second major thing that the tech lead does is they run the PowerPoint for the meeting. The meeting lead will read the script for the meeting. The meeting tech lead is the one that's actually going to be pushing forward that PowerPoint. And it's really important because we like to have all of the readings that are being used for the meeting, we like to have it in front of people in the shared screen so that they don't have to go back and forth to find those documents. What I'm going to click to right now is that Back to Basics CoDA PowerPoint. As you see at the top, it says open in Google Slides. You're going to want to click that, and it will bring you to the presentation. Once you are in this section, you're going to click on the top right corner where it says present. That is going to allow you to start the presentation. At this point, this is the structure of the meeting. Your job is to listen while the meeting lead is guiding the group through the meeting, and also while people are speaking so that you can move the presentation forward properly. For example, as the meeting starts, we're going to start with the opening prayer or the serenity prayer, whichever the meeting lead prefers. Once the opening prayer has been read, you're going to switch to the next slide because someone's going to be reading that welcome slide. Once they finish reading the welcome, preamble, 12 steps, 12 traditions, patterns and characteristics, etc. As people finish reading, you're going to want to push the slide forward so that the next person can read the appropriate section. When they are doing introductions, when the meeting lead is leading introductions, you want to make sure that you are on this welcome page. Milestones, And then we have this theme for sharing. Everything that is read in our meeting is in this PowerPoint presentation. So you're going to want to listen as people are reading through the information from the Big Blue Book, and make sure that you're pushing the slides forward so that the next person who passes the reading along is able to read their appropriate section. I'm going to rush through these. And then we go to the sharing portion of the meeting. There is no crosstalk during the sharing portion. It's very important that there be no crosstalk because we want to create a safe space. So keep this up as the meeting lead is talking about crosstalk. The next section is the open sharing. You'll notice that there is a link in the PowerPoint presentation. The timer link gets you to a Google page timer. So you simply click the link, it will open another tab, and it's going to start the time going. You're going to immediately stop it because the first person hasn't started sharing, I'm assuming. As soon as the first person starts sharing, you will press start. As the person is sharing, the countdown is going, and it's being seen by everyone in the meeting. Now, it's really important that we have it up so that each member who is sharing can self-regulate their time. Some people will stop early, some people will take the full 5 minutes, and both of them are perfectly fine. When the person stops speaking, whether they take the whole 5 minutes or not, you're going to want to stop and reset the time, clicking that reset button. You wait until the next person is about to share, and as that person starts sharing, you press the start button again and allow it to cycle through. You will keep doing this until the very last share. Once the final share happens, and it will either be the moderator or the meeting lead who is wrapping up the sharing portion, you will click back to the Back to Basics PowerPoint tab on the top side of your screen, and it will bring you back to this PowerPoint. Once you're back in the PowerPoint, you're going to actually click in the window. So my mouse button is currently just to the right of that cream color box in the middle of the screen. I click and it pops back up the presentation, and it pushes you to the next slide. The next section, we talk about the 7 traditions, announcements, and passing the torch. You're going to listen for the people talking about 7th tradition, listen for them talking about the group leads, and then you'll listen for them talking about the passing the torch. This is where we are identifying meeting leads, tech, and moderators for the next meeting or the next few meetings. It's very important that you stay on this page until that section, that part of the meeting is done, because we want people to be able to see what they're going to be responsible for doing. And closing. Read the 12 promises, talk about anonymity, closing prayer, and we're done. Your job as tech lead is technically now over. The very final thing I want to mention as tech lead is there is this third part. These are the links that take you to the Google Drive, the readings, and the meeting guide. I like to put those up in chat so that people can see them and have access to them, especially right before the Pass the Torch section, so that people can look through it and see what they need to do. That concludes the tech lead portion of this training. If you are a moderator, I will start that in just a moment. We're continuing on to the moderator portion of this training. The moderator is one of the lead roles in the Back to Basics CoDA meeting that will, quote unquote, host the meeting. In Zoom, there are different rights that are available to a person that is in the meeting, different permissions. The host permission allows the person to monitor the chat, turn off video screens, mute people, and also allows people to you can lower people's hands as they've pressed that raised hand bar. If you don't know what any of those mean, please reach out to someone in Back to Basics and we'll do a one-on-one training to help you learn the Zoom specifics. But there are many videos out there that can help you manage Zoom. This training is assuming that you have some knowledge of Zoom, but again, we can work with you. As I've said, those are the different items that you can do as a moderator. Your responsibility at the Back to Basics CoDA meeting is really to moderate the meeting as a whole. You want to make sure that as people are chatting, there is nothing negative being said, there's no profanity being said, and there's no one hijacking the meeting. The video screens, you want to scroll through those video screens from time to time to make sure that people are appropriately dressed, that no one is perhaps in their underwear, that no one is walking around in their underwear. Those are just things that we don't want to see. While it is perfectly fine and we respect people's wishes for what they want to do in the home, this is a collective group and we want to be respectful to everyone in the group. So we want to make sure that it is a safe space. If you do see someone in chat who is being inappropriate, you will want to message that person directly and please ask them to stop. If they do not stop, you can give them a warning and/or remove them from the meeting outright. The moderator role is a very it has a lot of responsibility to it because you have the ability to mute people, you have the ability to request for them to unmute, you have the ability to turn off their video, you have the ability to kick people out. This responsibility really should not be abused. And if it is abused, then you'll either be asked to not do it again. If it continues, you will unfortunately not be able to serve as a moderator. We want to, again, create a safe space for everyone in that meeting. A word about muting people. When people join the meeting, they are automatically muted. It is their responsibility to unmute themselves when they would like to speak. You also do not have the ability to unmute people. You can request an individual to unmute themselves, but they ultimately have that ability to do that. When you want to mute people, if someone is not actively talking or engaging, then they should always be muted. And this is the reason why. There is ambient noise in most houses. The neighbors outside, pets moving around, spouses or children doing things. And that is 100% okay, of course. But to ensure that our meeting is moving along at a proper pace and, again, creating a safe space, as well as limiting distractions for the people that are actively speaking, we want to make sure that everyone is muted, regardless of who they are. If they are not actively speaking, they need to be muted. This will require you to look through the participants to see if anyone is unmuted. And if, again, they're not actively speaking, or they perhaps forgot to mute themselves after they finished sharing, after they finished speaking, you want to go ahead and mute those people. This is not to be rude. This is not to tell people not to speak. This is simply to allow the meeting to move forward properly. Now, the last part of being a moderator is running the share portion of the meeting. As the host, you have the ability to lower people's hands as they raise their hands to request being able to share. You will do two things as you moderate this. One, track the people that have raised their hands. Make sure that you keep them in order. A quick way to do that is to add the names in the chat as you get them so that you can keep track of who goes first, second, and third, etc. The reason this is important is because this group tends to have a lot of people. We have had upwards of 50 attendants to the meeting, and we don't have a lot of time for sharing. So we want to make sure that the people who have spoken up first and need to share have the ability to share. You are going to continue the sharing portion until about, I believe it's 8 o'clock. At around 8, 8:10, you're going to want to stop the share. Make sure that you're not taking too many names because you want to make sure that the people that you get on the list are able to speak. But if it's 8:10, 8:15, and there's still a lot of people that need to share, we're going to have to cut it off. So you want to let people know at about 8 o'clock that there's only going to be time for 2 to 3 more shares. As people finish sharing, you will click on the lower hand for the person who has already spoken. So the only hands that are raised are people who have not spoken yet. That being said, not everyone is going to raise their hand. Some people will private message you in chat. Some people will add it to the general chat. Keep an eye on the chat. Keep an eye on the raised hands. So you're going to be juggling these two sections. And that is really it. That is what a moderator will do during the meeting. Once again, you moderate the chat, identifying any questions or issues, moderate the video, identifying any issues, mute people who have not muted themselves after they've spoken, track the sharing sign-up sheet, and call on people to share in the order that they have requested. And lastly, lower the participants' hands who have already shared. Thank you very much for signing up to be our moderator. We look forward to you participating in that meeting. This is a very important role. Thank you. Hello, meeting lead. Thank you very much for signing up to be our meeting lead for one of our upcoming meetings. Your role is incredibly important, and this training is going to help you go through what your role and responsibility is going to be during the meeting. The first thing I'd like to say is that it would be beneficial if you are able to sign into the meeting on or around 7:15. We ask no later than 7:15, but on or around that time is really helpful. And the reason for this is you want to make sure that your other leads are there with you. And if someone isn't able to make it, that we can pull a backup lead to make sure that all of the 3 roles are filled. As the meeting lead, you are responsible for moving the meeting forward at a good pace so that we're able to go through all the readings, so that the people are able to share, so that we're able to end on time, and lastly, so that we're able to be respectful of the people who are participating in the meeting, creating that comfortable and safe space for them to talk and to share. On my screen right now, you will see the meeting guide. In the beginning of this training, I showed where the meeting guide is, but just going back to that, this is the Google Drive. The first file you find is the Back to Basics PowerPoint presentation, which is explained in the tech lead portion of the meeting. The next section is the Back to Basics guide and transcript, which we'll be talking about here in just a moment. And the last item is the lead sign-up sheet, which is an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to open that one up first because it's important that we have meeting leads for each meeting. There is a part during the meeting where you will be calling for people to fill the role of meeting lead, tech lead, and moderator for the next meeting and/or other meetings moving forward. This is where you want to enter that information to make sure that we know who the leads are going forward. For now, we're going to go back to the meeting guide. The meeting guide, as I said, has all the information that you need to lead the meeting. It gives a description of what your tech lead is going to do. It gives a description of what your moderator is going to do. And of course, it gives a description of what you will be doing. The main parts of being the meeting lead is to welcome participants who arrive prior to that 7:30 time. So it's nice to log in, say hello to people, ask people to introduce themselves if they feel comfortable doing so, talk to people, perhaps even ask people to volunteer for those readings prior to the meeting starting. You have two options. You can either, and I'll go into this a little bit more in a moment, you can either ask people to volunteer prior to the meeting starting, or ask people to volunteer as the meeting is going forward. Second item, of course, start the meeting at 7:30. You are running the meeting and the time pace of the meeting. So it's very important that we start at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time and accommodate for your specific time zone. You're going to follow the script, which I'm going to review right now. You're going to, of course, as I said, coordinate the volunteers. And lastly, make sure that people know where the meeting materials can be found, which the tech lead should be posting in chat. If you have not seen it posted in the chat, you are more than welcome to go ahead and add that information into the chat, the link to where all of this material can be found. To quickly identify that, you can scroll back up to where the tech lead section is, grab these 3 bullets, copy, Control-C, go into Zoom chat, press Control-Z, and you will paste into the chat, and then press enter, of course, to post it. Excellent. Now let's go into the transcript. What you see in front of you is everything that is said during a meeting. Nothing in the meeting is anything that you have to ad-lib, impromptu, speak, make up. Everything is structured for you. Now, that is not to say that you have to read every single word. I encourage you to read the script in advance, and wherever you feel that you would like to add your own personality to it, please feel free to do so. This isn't meant to be restrictive. This is simply meant to be a guide so that you can feel comfortable as the meeting lead. As long as we're going through the readings, as long as we're sharing, as long as we have the business at the end, what happens during the middle really you can add your specific personality to it, as I said. Section 1, welcome, and you'll see annotated the slide information. So as you're reading, it specifically says what slide the tech lead should be on. Don't worry about the slides unless they aren't being moved forward, because the slides have everything that is needed for people to read from their personal locations. I won't read the whole transcript, but as you can see, it starts with the welcome. It goes into introducing your leads. You want to introduce your tech lead and your moderator. It's very beneficial for you to write the names down of the people that are assisting you that day. You will remind people to mute themselves. Start the meeting with either the CoDA opening prayer or the Serenity prayer, whichever you prefer. In the PowerPoint presentation, it does list the opening prayer, but I know that there are people who prefer the Serenity prayer. Please feel free to do so if you wish. The fundamental readings. Again, this will be in the PowerPoint presentation, but if you are looking for those fundamental readings, you can go back to the Google Drive, go to the file that says read at each meeting, double click that, and it will send you to all of the official CoDA documents that have been downloaded from coda.org. Going back to that meeting guide. When you're going through the fundamental readings, at this point, this is where your volunteers come in. Either you ask for them to volunteer in advance, at which point you will want to write down the name so you can call on them to read their section. If you did not get volunteers in advance, at this point, you'll ask people, can someone please volunteer to read the CoDA welcome? Can someone please volunteer to read the preamble? And they'll read it. 12 steps, and that person will read it, and so on. Whatever you feel more comfortable with, please feel free to do. Introductions. We introduce newcomers, we introduce the regular meeting attendees, and going around the room, you of course would introduce yourself at that time. Recognitions. We are a new group, and there are going to be people celebrating a lot of 1, 2, 3 month in CoDA. There will be also some people who celebrate their years in CoDA. Go as slow or as fast as you want in this section. When I read this through, I usually ask if there's anyone who has reached a 1 to 6 month milestone. As people are talking, you congratulate them. Other people are able to unmute themselves and congratulate those people as well. And then I ask for 9 months to a year, 9 months to a year, and then anything over a year. You don't have to go through each and every one of these bullet points if you are looking to speed things up a little bit. Now for the sharing portion. You have the option to read through the theme of the day yourself, or to ask people to volunteer. I'm going to go to the presentation for this section. I'm scrolling up to the section that shares the Big Blue Book, starting it in presentation mode. The theme for each meeting comes out of the Big Blue Book. Every week we go through a new step, or a step that we've gone through before, but we're going through it this week. In this particular presentation, we were going through step 4. You will start by reading step 4, or the step that you're reading at the time. In this case, step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. You can continue to read this section and every section moving forward, or you can ask people to volunteer to read a paragraph or two. Typically, people will read a slide and then pass. And then another person will read a slide and then pass. And you'll go through all of these slides until you make it to the very last one. And it usually ends with the idea of being able to move on to the next step. That is your cue for the reading about to end. Once that has happened, the tech lead will click over to the no crosstalk section. At this point, I'm going to go back to my meeting guide, which you will be reading. And we are looking at this section here. This is where you talk about opening the room to sharing and where you talk about crosstalk. Saying a word about crosstalk is very important. Again, you don't need to follow these words to the letter, because in the Back to Basics PowerPoint presentation, it does say everything there about crosstalk. So you can either read through it, or if you want to summarize, you're more than welcome to do so. Again, it's very important that we limit crosstalk, or actually have no crosstalk. There's really shouldn't be any reason for crosstalk in a Zoom meeting, provided that the tech lead is muting people, provided that the moderator is muting people who are not actively speaking. The moderator will now take over the meeting because they will identify the sharing time frame. They will identify the list of people who are sharing, and they'll be calling on those names. Once the moderator has called on all the names, and at about 8:35, 8:40, that's when the moderator is going to stop. I ask that you communicate with your moderator and decide on a time when sharing should stop, because there could be a time where the moderator won't be looking at the time and it might go too long. So you might want to step in between two shares and remind the moderator that this has to be the last share just before the time that you want to stop. So keep an eye on that clock. If you want to stop the shares at 8:45, then make sure that at 8:40-ish you are saying something if the moderator hasn't already said it. I tend to trust the moderator, so give them the space to be able to do that. And then we transition into the business of the day. We have the seventh tradition, where you are going to be calling on the treasurer, as it says here. Will the group treasurer please share the best methods for submitting donations? And the treasurer will then unmute their microphone and speak on that. You will ask for any announcements. There typically aren't any announcements, but we want to leave it there just in case there happens to be one. And then, of course, passing the torch. This is how you became our meeting lead, and this is how we want to pass the torch to the next person to become that meeting lead. It is very important that in the pass the torch section, that the presentation is on the pass the torch page, because it gives a quick rundown of what each of the lead responsibilities are. In the case of the meeting lead, you're reading the script and you are moving the meeting along forward. Going back to the script. Finally, our closing section. Someone will read the 12 promises, the person who either volunteered in advance or you will call on a volunteer to read, and you'll bring the meeting to a close by talking about the anonymity of the program, where we always say, what you see here, what is said here, when you leave here, let it stay here. That harkens to the anonymity of Codependence Anonymous and is very important. We end the meeting with the CoDA closing prayer, but again, if you prefer the Serenity Prayer, please feel free to substitute it. There is nothing wrong with substituting the closing prayer with the Serenity Prayer. Either are perfectly fine and accurate. And lastly, before you close, the traditional Codependence Anonymous, keep coming back. It works if you work it. So work it because you're worth it. Thank you again for taking on the part of the meeting lead. Your role and the roles of every other meeting lead help this meeting happen. As I said in the beginning of the training, this can be done by one person, and it has been done by one person before. But splitting the leads up into 3 different sections allows each person to not just help serve those people that are coming to the meeting, but also it helps you take the responsibility so that you do come to the meeting. And lastly, by having the 3 different people, it gives it so that you aren't inundated with doing everything. There's no reason to have anyone stressed out about these meetings. If you are able to come and be a tech lead, a moderator, or a meeting lead, it is greatly appreciated, not just by the service members who are running the group as a whole, which include your treasurer, your tech coordinator, and literature guide, but you're also providing a service to everyone that comes to these meetings, as I said. Thank you again. There will be links in the video description, and thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful time, and I'll see you at the next meeting.